This is something else, man.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Independent Producers Organization Live Showcase. It's glad to have you with us. We have a call-in person from California, Californians for Population Stabilization. And I'll get him on the line right away, and he's going to introduce himself. I think, Joe, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I need the sound up just a little more, if you can do that. Can you raise his sound a little bit? That's better. Yeah, that's great.
That was him.
Okay, Joe. You're still there, right?
We can't hear him, though. We can't hear him still.
Joe Guzzardi, a senior writing fellow from Californians for Population Stabilization, headquartered in Santa Barbara.
Awesome.
And I've been studying and writing about immigration for about 30 years.
Wow.
So that qualifies me as an expert, for better or for worse.
I think so.
Okay, now you can't see him, but my my co-host rather, is Bruce Broussard, who ran for mayor, and you ran for.
I ran for governor in 2003 during the recall Gray Davis election. That is the election that ended up with Arnold Schwarzenegger taking the gubernatorial seat from Gray Davis, who was indeed recalled.
Right. Okay. Okay. Great.
Congratulations.
Did you have anything more first, or?
Well, yes. I think one of the things that is interesting about how I became involved in immigration is that I made a career change in 1986. I had been involved in the finance industry, and I returned to California. I'm a native Californian, born and raised in Los Angeles, and I had moved away, held some jobs after college on the East Coast, and I returned to California in 1986 and took a job teaching English as a second language at in the California public school system. So it was through that experience that I got really firsthand knowledge about and firsthand information about how the immigration system worked, because my students were English as a second language learners. So I became acquainted with them and their stories, and that's pretty much how it all began.
Okay.
Also interesting is that in 1986, that was the year that the that was the year that the Immigration Reform and Control Act passed, Ronald Reagan's amnesty in 1986. And a lot of my students were involved in that whole process. So I got another very close-hand look at how it all works, and learned a lot about how it works that people don't read in the newspapers or don't really know about, couldn't possibly know about in any other way.
Okay. One of the things we've been looking at here is an article actually it was in the Sunday paper, of 65 million people that are essentially traveling the earth homeless. And it's just hard to believe that there's that many that are on the move. And I even had it printed out here. They just don't know what to do. They don't know what to do with that many people. And who can come up with it? All these...
Very, very troubling for sure. A lot of people on the move, a lot of people who are trying to escape totalitarian governments And, of course, the number one destination for a good many of those people, or would-be destination, is the United States.
Oh, yeah.
And it's troubling to think that the United States doesn't have a more well-defined policy of what it can do with refugee resettlement without completely disrupting the fabric and the makeup of the United States. It's something that needs to be thought through very carefully and should not be a political pawn in an election cycle or anything like that. But we've seen, certainly in the last few months here, maybe the last couple of years, that it's not thought through hardly at all.
Okay.
We've got all kinds, what we have basically is the President of the United States who is committed to taking in an additional 10,000, mostly Syrian refugees, but also some Iraqis in there. And we have him telling the nation that no need to worry, they're being thoroughly vetted. And then the next thing you know, you pick up the newspaper and you learn that, well, the vetting period, which used to be 18 to 24 months, has now been slashed to 3 months to help President Obama meet his goal. And you also have the FBI Director, James Comey, and other security experts, too, continuing to insist that the Syrians cannot be vetted at all, whether you're talking about 3 months or 24 months. There's not enough background data available on their histories to perform any kind of consequential vetting. So
and
that's where we are on refugee resettlement.
And that's not even getting to the jobs that they're taking away from American citizens.
Exactly. That's a great point, and one that's almost never mentioned in the mainstream media. Every one of the refugees that's come in during the past decade, and all of the ones that are coming in and all of the ones that will come in, get work permits. They are work authorized from day one. And what that means is that they can go out and compete with American citizens for jobs that become open, or even more unsettling, and there's ample evidence of this, they can be hired by legally hired by unscrupulous employers who can pay them less money than they've been paying Americans or than they are willing to pay Americans, because these are refugees who don't have many options. So a job comes up in their community that maybe should pay $12 or $15 an hour. The unscrupulous employer says, well, I can give you the job, but I can only pay you $8 an hour. There's a lot of that going on out there.
That's right. The savings on workers goes to the capitalist investments. It's just a transfer of money.
Exactly. It's a huge transfer of wealth, the beneficiaries of which are the corporate elite and the top 1% of the United States income earners. And it's a really, truly bad thing for Americans who have paid into the system and who are maybe even they've given up trying to get ahead, but they just like to not get further behind. I mean, there hasn't been a real increase in wages in maybe 20 years, possibly even longer. So people are, unfortunately, have grown accustomed to that. And a lot of people are at a point in their lives where they're saying, look, I just don't want to get any further behind. I don't want to lose my job to a refugee to help President Obama meet some political objective, or I don't want to lose my job to an illegal immigrant who's working off the books. all of those kinds of things have really put Americans on edge and made them very angry with their government.
Mm-hmm.
I got a story I want to tell you that happened. It could have been 4 or 8 years ago, but it happened here. Involved Del Monte, the fruit packing company, and all of a sudden one day, they came and cleaned out 120 illegal aliens and ICE, I guess you call it.
Right.
And they got them completely out of there. Within a few days, every position was filled by an American citizen. I could never get over that. That means all those people were just waiting to go back to work, but somebody cheaper or whatever has taken over their job.
There have been many cases like that, and also every time there's a job fair anywhere in the United States, you've got hundreds of people showing up to these job fairs with the hope that they'll be able to land a decent paying job. There's something like 94 million Americans who are detached from the workforce, meaning they're either working part-time, not of their own choosing, involuntary part-time, or they've given up looking for jobs. And every month the Bureau of Labor Statistics report comes out, always, or not always, but very often spun as a positive report because, say, like last month's report, 255,000 jobs. But then you look at those jobs and you look at the underlying data and you see that those jobs are in the service industry, bartending, waiting tables, the kinds of jobs that don't pay very well, that are part-time, possibly even part-time and temporary. So that's where the American economy really is. There's virtually no manufacturing jobs whatsoever.
Joe, I've had a request for your phone number down there at CAPS.
Sure. 805-705-8290.
Got it. Okay. While we're on that subject, I was going to comment about something Frosty Woolridge said. Paying for other cultures to mass immigrate into your country to outbreed and replace you doesn't make you a more tolerant or better person. It makes you a fool. I think he's right on with that.
Well, Frosty is a friend of mine for all of the 30 years that I've been involved in immigration. And
same here.
I agree totally with that statement, with that perspective. And I have a different way of saying the same thing. And what I call it is financing our own displacement. I mean, we're paying to have ourselves, to have the American way of life completely and totally stolen out from under us. And all of these things are made possible through taxpayer funding, involuntary taxpayer funding, I might add. In California, we have, this is a statistic that may surprise many people in your audience, but we have approximately 1.5 million students in the California K-12 public school system that do not speak English. 1.5 million.
Yeah.
Now, the total school enrollment is about 6 million. So 25% of the California public school enrollment does not speak English. Now, if you take the average daily cost of educating a student in California, that figure is about $10,000 per student per year.
Gee.
$15 billion to educate non-English speaking students per annum in California. 1 year.
When I read your information about how much was going out on welfare and health and education, everything to do with these illegal aliens, I wonder where could that much money be coming from, except us. It just seems incredible that there's that much money going out for them.
It's something that's not really fully realized by the majority of people in California. I mean, if you were to ask the average Californian, well, do you think taxpayers subsidize illegal immigrants in the state of California? I mean, obviously the answer to that would be, oh, yes, definitely so. But then if you started saying, well, okay, but do you know that the state pays $15 billion alone for educating non-English speaking students? I mean, I should point out here that not all of those 1.5 million non-English speaking students are illegal immigrants, right? Some of them are anchor babies who don't speak English, and some of them may be the children of legal immigrants, but at least a third of them are illegal immigrants. So if you went down line by line and said, well, this is what we're spending for education, and this is what we're spending for public housing, and this is what we're spending for emergency medical care.
Yeah.
People don't know that total, and it really is a shocking total.
Wow.
And in California, we've been cursed by leadership. Wrong word, but I'm using it for lack of a better one. But governors, United States senators, and certainly the California Assembly that has been all in on illegal immigration. So that's how we find ourselves where we are.
No, that's right. That's right. It said there's more than 300 sanctuary cities. So we know San Francisco is one of them. I had no idea there were almost 300 more where they're protected from deportation. You go back to Eisenhower. He got sent 1 million back to their own countries when he was in office. Why is it so hard to do that now?
Well, it's not hard to do. It's not hard to do in any way, but you have to have people in office who are willing to do it. And it could be done both in terms of actual deportation, or it could be done indirectly by putting laws in place that make it untenable for illegal immigrants to continue to live unlawfully in the United States. I'm thinking most specifically of E-Verify. You know, you pass mandatory E-Verify, and that means that to hold a job in the United States, the individual must be either an American citizen or a legal immigrant. Now, mandatory E-Verify has passed the House of Representatives at least 3 different times since 2010, at least twice, and I believe 3 times since 2010. So it passes the Judiciary Committee. The next logical step is for it to go to the full House of Representatives for a vote. It's never gone to the full House of Representatives for a vote because John Boehner and then Paul Ryan refused to put it up for a vote. So there it is.
What can Paul Ryan benefit from by doing this against so many people that don't want that?
He's perhaps the most ideologically committed to the idea of open borders, the free flow of people, the free flow of goods, refugee resettlement, all of the things that the vast majority of Americans want paused at a minimum, if not completely, if not having a complete moratorium imposed. Ryan is all for all of it. Boehner was almost as staunch in his advocacy for illegal immigration as Ryan, but not quite. So when you've got a guy who's managing what bills get sent up to the floor for a vote, who doesn't want to hear about E-Verify, like Boehner and like Ryan, it makes it impossible to get that kind of legislation passed. Of course, it doesn't help that Obama is opposed to it also. So you've got basically insurmountable opposition to mandatory E-Verify. But you mentioned it just a couple of minutes ago about sanctuary cities. If we had 24 hours instead of 1 hour to list all of the outrages of illegal immigration, we probably could count them all. But right up toward the top would be this complete farce of sanctuary cities. I mean, first of all, they're illegal on their face. It's against the federal law to not cooperate with immigration officials when they request information or when they request action from a local law enforcement. So right off the top, they're wrong. And then once you get past that, or if you could get past that, the consequences of these sanctuary cities is just an unbelievably long history of hideous murders and rapes and all types of crime. The Kate Steinle case in San Francisco was headline news, but there have been so many others, including one just a couple of months ago up in your area on the blueberry farm there. And they just go on and on and on, and then you have people saying to you with a straight face, well, sanctuary cities make our community, sanctuary city policies make our communities safer. Kate Steinle, for example, gets shot dead by a 5-time deported, 7-time convicted felon, and the San Francisco Board of Supervisors says, we're not changing that policy because sanctuary cities make our communities safer. So what do you say to that? I mean, it's just so annoying that it defies a response.
That one case in the paperwork you sent to me of that guy that cut up his friend, he stabbed him 89 times or something.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible, and then tore out some of his insides. And that's after being sent back there, right? Either once or twice.
Right, yeah, this was in Maryland, I think, or Virginia. Maryland, pretty sure it was in Maryland. Yeah, he had been previously deported, and he had been released. ICE had put a detainer out on him, and he had been released. This is a guy from Salvador, which has some of the most cutthroat murderers around.
Wow.
And which have organized this notoriously brutal gang, MS-13. Yes, this guy cut up his best friend and stabbed him all of those 80-odd times. And
but the main thing was we couldn't keep him out of the country.
Well, because that's exactly right. If you could, I mean, these guys get deported. So what happens is people might say, well, we deported him. I mean, we deported him, but he came back.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, well, why did he come back? How is it possible for somebody who's been deported to come back? And not only come back once, but come back 5 times or 6 times. The guy in Oregon was 6 times deported. the fellow up there that killed 3 people in the blueberry farm, I think he was deported 6 times.
Oh.
Anyway,
Okay.
well, you know, because the border is wide open, that's why. Now, if you had true border enforcement, if you had agents and National Guard and whatever other types of law enforcement figures on the border, you wouldn't have a situation where people could just be deported and then walk right back over the very next day. And if you had internal enforcement, which is essentially non-existent in the United States. You know, you mentioned Eisenhower a few minutes ago. I mean, under the Eisenhower administration, there was internal enforcement. You had INS agents that checked out workplaces and day labor centers and the like, and they made sure, to the best of their ability, and they worked very hard at it, they made sure that if you were present in the interior of the United States illegally, you were going to be sent back. And they didn't just send you back to Tijuana. You know, they would take you back to the Mexico-Guatemala border. So it was tough. If you had thoughts about coming back into the United States, you had a long way to go to get back in.
Just curious, how do they get them down there? Is it
Well, they would transport them down there. I mean, the United States INS agents, through different sources, they would get them down to some point in northern or central Mexico, and then physically put them on a bus that would get, you know, the next stop was the Mexico-Guatemala border. So that's how they did it.
Okay.
But now, I mean, now there was an interview in the Los Angeles Times about a year ago, and the former director of ICE, of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, was interviewed by a Los Angeles Times reporter. And the ICE agent, the former ICE director, said, you know, realistically, the odds of what he called a run-of-the-mill immigrant, illegal immigrant, the odds of a run-of-the-mill illegal immigrant getting deported are close to 0. That was his words, close to 0. In other words, if you're an illegal immigrant and you come to Los Angeles or Portland or New York, and you're just kind of hanging around minding your own business, you're not involved in any kind of crimes, you're not high visibility in any way, the chances of you getting deported are like 0. So that's what passes for internal enforcement in the Obama administration.
Well, in that example, that person would probably try to work and try to send money back. Would that be right?
Sure. I mean, they've got to either, once somebody comes to the United States, either legally or illegally, they've got to have income. So that means they're either going to apply for public services or they're going to get a job. So there's a case where E-Verify would be absolutely crucial. Guy doesn't have any means. He's got no particular skills. He certainly doesn't have access to enough money to sustain himself, so he needs a job. He goes to any place, you know, a retail outlet or agricultural work site, and applies for a job, and E-Verify says, hey, this guy's in the United States illegally. You, the employer, could be penalized severely if you hire him. And that's the other, you know, that's the other thing, too, that never seems to happen. Employers should be penalized meaningfully, not some slap on the wrist token fine, but meaningful penalties, and a little bit of jail time wouldn't hurt either, so that employers would think twice before they hire illegal immigrants.
Oh, yeah, for the employer. Okay.
Yeah, for the employer, right, exactly.
All right.
I believe there was a big case up in the Pacific Northwest, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Zirkle Fruit, you know that outfit? They're kind of like Del Monte, you know, they're a big grower. And
Okay.
they had, there was an Immigration and Customs Enforcement raid up there, and they found all kinds of collusion among the management team to hire illegal immigrants and to falsify I-9 documents and you know, just a series of felonious employment crimes. And, you know, the president of the company got some $10,000 fine, and, you know, it was just ridiculous. I mean, it was just the kind of thing that a corporation, a big company would laugh at. I mean, it's just not a meaningful amount. Nobody did any jail time, even though the law calls for fines and or jail time. But again, another example of immigration laws that are not enforced.
Okay. It's just overwhelming, all this stuff. Just
well,
so much.
it is overwhelming, and I think there's a couple of things that are going on that are interesting in the sense that when I got started in this, say, 30 years ago, you know, you talked a little bit about immigration, and people kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, well, we're, you know, a little bit of immigration doesn't hurt, diversity, people coming to find a better life, you know, all of the platitudes that we still hear today. But now you're finding more and more people who are saying, you know, we've got a lot of immigration. We've got an unsustainable amount of immigration. What we've got now is an immigration policy that's on autopilot every year, no matter what. 1 million new legal permanent residents come to the United States. It doesn't matter if the economy's in the tank. You get 1 million legal immigrants. It doesn't matter if there's a mortgage meltdown that lasts for 5 years or longer. You get 1 million legal immigrants. It doesn't matter if California has 40 million people and all of the new people in California are either immigrants or the children of immigrants. The United States gets 1 million new immigrants every year. So people are starting to say, hey, you know, that's not a sustainable policy. It needs to be reviewed. I mean, you know, look at your major cities. I was just in Washington, D.C. You know, I go to New York. I go to Los Angeles. I just got back from San Francisco. There's a lot of immigration in those cities, and people are starting to wake up and say, well, maybe it really is time for a pause or a moratorium.
Yeah,
I mean,
pause.
You know, the projections, the Census Bureau projections for population growth in the United States predict that by like 2050, there's going to be 475 million people in the United States. We're at 325 million now, so that's an additional 150 million people. Almost all of it attributable to immigration. So what's the country going to look like?
It's,
well,
our culture is at stake. That's exactly what it is.
Absolutely that. Yeah, absolutely that.
Everybody wants to change it to their culture, too.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, exactly. I mean, first of all, I would say, well, what is the big rush to change it? I mean, what was so bad that it's got to be changed? And then I would say, why? I mean, what is the objective? Do you want the United States to be like Mexico? Or do you want the United States to be like the Middle East? Or do you want the United States to be like Germany, like today's Germany?
Like United States.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
so these are questions, and it's, you know, I've mentioned Obama's name a couple of times here, but I got to point out that you know, Bush had a big hand in this kind of thing too.
I wanted to comment to do with Obama. This goes back, I don't know, again, 4, 10 years, something like that. Probably not that long. And he did something major, like to do with the DREAM thing, and let a whole bunch of people become citizens or temporary or something like that. And when I realized what he was doing it so that he would get more votes. And I said, I'm embarrassed that have someone, shall we say, that crooked, doing something like that so they can get more votes that way instead of doing it the right way. Just wanted to make a comment about that in particular.
Right. Well, I think the program that you're talking about, I don't know, Obama has done lots of things to gut immigration enforcement. And for those in the audience that are interested in finding out what they all are, they can go to Senator Jeff Sessions, United States Senator Jeff Sessions' website, and he has got a list of like 75 to 100 different things that Obama has done that directly violate immigration law. But to get back to your point, Richard, you are, I believe, talking about deferred action for childhood arrivals, a program that Obama unilaterally signed off on that would give young illegal immigrants, basically illegal immigrants but that had not reached the age of 30 and who came to the United States as infants, it would give them protection from deportation and, just as we were talking about a couple of minutes ago, work permits. So you're a 25-something-year-old illegal immigrant. You either haven't been able to get a job because you're not work authorized, or you've been forced to take a menial job because that's all you can get. Maybe you're paid under the table. All of a sudden you have a work permit and you can work legally anywhere.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the kind of thing that people are up against. And when the media reported on that program, they reported it almost exclusively as a program that was intended to shield these young, supposedly victims of their parents' illegal entry. It would provide the children with protection from being deported, but they never mentioned that there was a work permit involved in the package. And, you know, as we were saying here just a couple of minutes ago, nobody's getting deported anyway. So it's completely ludicrous to say, well, we're going to protect this group or this category of immigrant or that category of immigrant from deportation, because nobody's getting deported anyway. Even criminals aren't getting deported. Yes. You know, they're getting re-released. So it's very important, you know, the people, I think, in general, I don't know, Oregon is a mostly liberal state. Do you see any growing resistance to lawlessness on immigration enforcement
I think
at all?
You're right. You're right about the liberal state situation.
Mm-hmm.
So
the status quo is okay up in Oregon?
It's pro-choice. That'd be one of the best ways to describe the liberal situation, which I don't have a problem with. But
yeah. Well, you had a nice win up there on the driver's licenses, though.
Yeah, I know that I had to go down, I think, to Social Security, get proof, and take it out to their office to show that I was able to be a driver in Oregon. So I don't see all these aliens doing that same thing. They didn't do, I don't think they're doing what I had to do. I had to prove totally that I was a citizen. Social Security, everything.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't surprise me if you had to meet higher standards than illegal immigrants do for, to get a driver's licenses. California just started its program last year. Driver's licenses for illegal immigrants had been vetoed repeatedly in California for 20 or 25 years. And, the immigration lobby just keeps coming back. They are defeated on Monday, and on Tuesday they're back with a new bill.
Yeah.
And finally, when Jerry Brown got into office, a very radically pro-illegal immigration governor, he got in. The Hispanic Assembly wrote and passed the bill, and Brown signed it. And now, if you're an illegal immigrant in California, you can get a driver's license.
Wow.
And Brown said, well, it's important that they have driver's licenses because without them they can't get to their job, without mentioning that
they've
it's
taken
illegal
from
for them to be working.
We didn't pass that one.
Can't get to their jobs that they've taken from American citizens.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah. So Brown is, Brown has got, I think, 2 more years in office, and Barbara Boxer is retiring, but her likely replacement is going to be worse on immigration than she was. The state attorney general, Kamala Harris, is the front runner for that Senate job. So, that's just where it is. But
we haven't even covered directly overpopulation, because immigration is so much a part of too many people. But
right.
Overpopulation is so important. And I was just thinking, I had an idea that I think politicians should think seriously about: eliminating all deductions. That includes for children and all that, because we almost passed the point where one child is almost too many. We have to do something, and this has been true with Paxson of balance, and that's something you can look on the computer about. Paxson's very conscious of that also. So
well, I could not agree more with you on that. I mean, it's ridiculous to be giving tax credits for having children. As you point out, it should be just the opposite.
Right. Right.
When I have children, we can't pass any laws against that, but you're going to pay for those kids yourself, because, as you say, population. I mean, there just isn't any way to be able to sustain this crazy growth, both births, natural births to American citizens, and the 1 million legal immigrants that come in every year. Plus, we've been talking about the 1 million legal immigrants, but plus that, there's about 750,000 guest worker visas that are handed out, and you can bet for sure that at least half of them never go home. They just don't go home. The tourists that come to the United States don't go home. There was a hearing.
Why would they want to?
Pardon me?
Why would they want to?
Yeah, why would they want to? Exactly. So somebody comes over on a tourist visa, and they say, well, I'm not going home. And they say they're not going home because they are completely confident that they're not going to be found out. And if they are found out, they're 90% confident that they're not going to be deported. So there was this hearing up on Capitol Hill at the Senate 2 or 3 months ago, and they had some of the Department of Homeland Security officials testifying, and one of the senators said, well, why is it that 40% of all people that come to the United States on visas don't go home? And he said, well, they don't go home because we can't find them. And then the senator said, well, would it be true to say that you can't find them because you're not looking for them? So the guy said, the Department of Homeland Security said, yeah, well, it's true. We're not looking for them. So, again, just know nothing. You would really be hard-pressed to say, this one area of immigration is handled thoughtfully and managed prudently and has the best interests of America at heart. I mean, I can't think of one. Maybe if I'll think about it for a week and maybe I'll be able to come up with something. But the whole idea behind immigration is that it's supposed to benefit America and Americans.
Right.
It's not some willy-nilly deal where anybody who can get across the border can stay, and anybody who comes to go to Disneyland can stay. And it's certainly not about somebody who comes to Disneyland and has a baby and can have that kid be an American citizen. It is certainly not about that.
Hey, Joe, this is Bruce Broussard, Oregon Voters Digest, and I'm really impressed with all of that information and background you're sharing. Boy, I'm mystified. But one thing I'd like to throw on the table with you, it seems as though you've probably given some thoughts about that. We've got a new election here now. We've got a presidential election. We've got, as you know, we've got Donald Trump on the Republican side. We've got Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side, and we've got two other entities that third parties, like the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, and who may be considered might be in the debates, if you will, come September. Have you given any thoughts on looking at these folks and analyzing from the standpoint of how do you think these folks fit in regards to responding to some of the concerns that you have shared with us tonight?
Hillary Clinton is on board as saying that among the first things that she hopes to accomplish are to go further to the left of Barack Obama on immigration. So she wants more immigration. She wants to open some kind of a office of immigration affairs to help expedite more immigration. She wants many more refugees than President Obama. So she has staked out a position even further to the left of Obama, which is very, very hard to conceptualize from where I sit. Now, Donald Trump has made some very strong statements about wanting to end illegal immigration, and so when you compare and contrast those two positions, it's clear that for people who are interested in sensible immigration, I don't know that Trump would be able to totally end illegal immigration, but if he's setting out with that as his goal, okay, if that's what he hopes to accomplish in office, that at least starts you out with some hope. If Hillary Clinton sets out as her goal to widely increase illegal immigration, completely tear down whatever token borders might exist to have still more refugees. I'm not sure that she could accomplish that either, but, that is the direction that she would like to head in. It's interesting because I think it wasn't that long ago that Hillary Clinton actually had some pretty prudent things to say about immigration. She had said that she thought that the Central American minors should be made to return home. She was against driver's licenses for illegal immigrants in New York. But Bernie Sanders kind of pushed her to the left on immigration. And now she's out advocating big time among Latino audiences. She gave a quasi press conference the other day to a group of Hispanic journalists. So that's my take on.
What about those third party deals? Have you given consideration if in fact they were in the debates come September? You think this issue might be brought to the table such that give a better feel for the American people in terms of how they should vote on this issue?
I believe that immigration will definitely be a subject on the debates, no question about that whatsoever. And that's going to be interesting because during up till now, Clinton has only talked about expanding immigration to immigration-friendly audiences. So she goes, for example, to a conference of Hispanic journalists and talks a big game about amnesty and more immigration. Of course, she's got a very receptive audience. But I'm not at all sure that a national audience is going to be receptive to that position. In fact, I'm quite sure that it would not be receptive to it. So I think that's going to represent a really good opportunity for Trump to recapture some of the momentum that he seems to have lost a little bit in the last couple of days.
Yeah.
As far as the third-party candidates go, I don't really know specifically, but I would take a guess that they're probably pro-immigration also. But I'd be surprised if they get on the debate stage.
I got you.
I'd be very surprised.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
I just had another point that I was going to make. At latest records show that 91% of legal immigrants become cyclical welfare recipients because they lack language, educational, and needed skills. They escaped their poverty in their own countries to remanifest their poverty in America.
Wow.
So that would account for a whole lot of them, illegal aliens that come into our country. People that
no
just
doubt.
can't do anything.
I mean, no question about it. I can go back to my teaching days, and there are studies, demographic studies, that have been done about what the makeup of a typical illegal immigrant is, and they are, for the most part, not conversational in English, and they have limited skills. So, by definition, they're going to be poor in America. And if they're poor in America, then they're going to have to get access to welfare. And the easiest way for them to do that is to have an American citizen child who qualifies for welfare, and then they can, they can get in on welfare benefits that way. But when you're looking at immigration, I mean, when people are trying to determine what their individual positions are on immigration, you've got to say, well, is this good for the country? And if you want to be more specific about it, is this good for me? I mean, is it good for me and my family, for example, to continue to allow an unchecked flow of mostly undereducated, mostly non-English speaking immigrants to take up residency in the United States? Well, the answer to that question is cut and dried. The answer is no. It's not good for you. It's not good for your family. And it's not good for the United States. The interesting thing, too, is, and I, for the life of me, don't understand why politicians don't make more of this issue. It's horrible for black Americans. Absolutely horrible for black Americans. So why a majority of black Americans are all in for Hillary Clinton and all in for more immigration, where there's going to be more people competing for the mostly low-wage jobs that so many black Americans and minority Americans hold. I don't understand that.
Right. Okay.
It's easily explained. If I had an audience of black people in front of me, it is so easily explained to them. But I think a lot of working class blacks understand it. They see it. The black leadership, and again, that's the wrong word, but the blacks like Jesse Jackson and the black Congressional Caucus, they're in it for votes. They say, well, okay, this may not be so good for my constituents, but these people are probably going to vote Democratic once they get the right to vote. So it's good for me. It's good for me.
Okay, we're down to where there's a couple minutes left. I know I want to thank our crew for helping us out here and making all the difference. And I appreciate your calling in like you did. That has just been so
awesome.
helpful.
Been awesome.
And
well, it's been a real pleasure to visit with you, and I'm always available to come back on, and hope we can do it again.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
I've got lots of ideas to share. 30 years on the immigration beat.
Awesome.
You form your opinions. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much, Richard, and feel free to call on me again anytime, and I'll look forward to doing it again soon.
Okay, and say hello to Joe Wiedemann.
Yes, I will. Yeah, I'll be talking to her tomorrow. And
the main.
I get to Portland now and again.
Great.
So I will look you up. I was up there last year for a baseball event of all things, and
really.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Portland Old Timers Baseball
Awesome.
Association.
I like it.
Really?
I like it. Get on Oregon Voters Digest too. I'll get you on.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Richard and Bruce. Thanks to you.
Thanks very much, Joe. Good time.
Thank you very much.
Good information.
Great.
I guess we're there.
This was just great, Richard. I really appreciate it. This is really great, Richard. Good information. Good show. Excellent show. And now it's up to the voting public. They've got the information, right?
That's right.
Really great. Really great. Wow. Maybe one of